When Karen from our HOA told me my beloved oak tree violated neighborhood symmetry, I thought she was joking. That tree was planted by my late father and had stood strong for over 40 years. But Karen, the queen of petty rules, demanded it be cut down or face daily fines. Instead of backing down, I decided to do something that made her regret ever opening her mouth. I built a treehouse so magnificent it overshadowed her entire life and her actual house. Rooted in history, fueled by spite. There's something sacred about an old tree. The giant oak in my front yard wasn't just foliage, it was family. My dad planted it with his bare hands the year I was born. Over the decades, it grew tall, proud, and wide, with branches that stretched like open arms toward the sky. My son climbed it. We hung holiday lights from it. It shaded our porch and gave the whole block a touch of character. Apparently, that last part was a problem for Karen. Karen was the self-appointed ruler of our HOA, despite never being elected. She had that clipboard fused to her hand like it was a weapon. She took joy in issuing citations over mailbox height, flower colors, and now, tree aesthetics? One morning, I came outside to find a bright orange violation notice zip-tied to the tree. This tree does not conform to HOA Neighborhood Symmetry Code 5.6.7. All large flora visible from the sidewalk must be proportionate in height and width to surrounding front yard vegetation. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in a $150 daily fine. I laughed at first. This had to be a prank. But no, Karen appeared 2 minutes later, like a villain triggered by laughter. "You've had your fun," she said, squinting at me like I had offended the gods of landscaping. "That tree has thrown off the look of this block for too long. It's disruptive, distracting, and frankly, it's time for it to go." I blinked. "Karen, this tree's older than you are." "It doesn't matter. The HOA has standards." "No, you have standards. The HOA rules don't even mention trees like this." She raised an eyebrow. "I wrote an addendum last night." I paused. "You rewrote the rules because of my tree?" "Someone has to maintain order." I stared at her. Unbelievable. "That tree has been here for 40 years. "Then it's had a good run," she snapped, turning on her heel and strutting back toward her pastel beige nightmare of a house. For the next few days, she upped the pressure. Daily emails, passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox. She even called code enforcement, though they laughed and told her the city had no problem with it. But Karen wasn't giving up, and something inside me snapped. I wasn't just going to keep the tree. I was going to honor it. I was going to build a treehouse. Not just any treehouse, a treehouse bigger than her house. Planning my petty masterpiece. I'm no stranger to tools. I run a small custom woodworking business. So when I decided to turn my dad's old tree into a project worthy of legacy and revenge, I called up my contractor buddy Dave. "Treehouse?" he asked, eyeing the oak. "That's a beast of a tree. You could fit a studio apartment up there." "Perfect," I said. "Let's go bigger." We spent days designing it. Multi-level platforms, spiral staircase, reinforced beams, solar-powered lighting, even a wraparound balcony. I filed the necessary permits, and since the tree was on my private property and not violating any real zoning laws, the city approved everything. Karen tried to interfere, of course. She marched over when we started clearing branches for support beams. "You need HOA approval for construction," she hissed. "Nope," I said, showing her the signed permit and city documents. "This doesn't violate any municipal code, and HOA doesn't govern vertical construction in pre-existing flora." She turned redder than a tomato sunbathing on lava. "This is war," she growled. "No, Karen, this is woodwork." Every day, Karen watched from her window like a paranoid hawk. She took photos, tried to report me for unauthorized noise and disturbing wildlife. At one point, she even held a sign at the end of my driveway that said, "Stop Tree Madness." But she couldn't stop me. Word spread fast. Neighbors started stopping by to watch. Kids begged for sneak peeks. Even the mailman asked if he could take a tour when it was done. Karen hated it. Her house was modest, single-level, tan stucco, no real personality. Meanwhile, the treehouse was becoming a neighborhood icon. It had stained wood, natural green roofing, porthole windows, and even a skylight. When we finally installed the rope bridge from the upper balcony to a nearby branch, Karen nearly fainted. She called an emergency HOA meeting. I attended just to spite her. She pulled out a projector and started a PowerPoint presentation titled Dangers of Excessive Tree Architecture. Slide 1 was a pixelated photo of my treehouse. Slide 2 had a cartoon of a squirrel falling off a ladder. I believe this treehouse, she declared dramatically, poses structural, moral, and visual risks to this neighborhood. Someone in the back whispered, "You just don't like that it looks better than your house." Karen snapped her clipboard shut and stormed out. Final touches and the big reveal. 3 weeks later, the masterpiece was done. 2 stories high, cedar wood siding, a hidden bookshelf door, a hammock corner, even a loft space for reading and games. I added one final piece, a bronze plaque mounted near the base of the tree that read, "In memory of Dad, planted with love, built with purpose, completed with petty vengeance." The night we lit up the string lights across the branches, half the block came by. Kids ran up and down the spiral staircase. Neighbors brought wine and cookies. Someone played guitar on the lower deck. Karen, she called the cops. They came, looked around, shrugged, and left, after taking a selfie with Max, my golden retriever, honorary neighborhood mayor. By the end of the night, even the mayor of our small town commented on the viral photos and said, "Every neighborhood needs a treehouse like this." Karen stayed inside all night, her blinds firmly closed. By the time the treehouse was complete, it had become more than just a structure. It was a statement, a symbol of standing tall, literally and figuratively, against unreasonable authority. The neighborhood loved it. Kids were laughing again, neighbors chatted on the lawn, and it felt like the soul of our community had been reignited. But there was one person who couldn't stand it: Karen. She wasn't just bitter, she was livid. Her pristine beige house was now overshadowed by my beautifully crafted, rustic, glowing treehouse that everyone adored. Her power over the neighborhood had begun to unravel, and she knew it. So she did what Karens do best. She escalated. Karen's plan of attack. 2 days after our block party under the treehouse, I got a notice taped to my front door. Notice of tree removal, city code enforcement, scheduled visit, immediate attention required. Karen had gone above the HOA. She filed a false report with the city, claiming that the treehouse had damaged sewer lines underground, destabilized the sidewalk, and created public safety hazards. It was laughable, but also serious. I knew the city had to follow up. The inspector, Greg, showed up the next morning, clipboard in hand. "Hey," I greeted him, "you hear about the supposed tree disaster?" He chuckled. "Yup. Let me guess. Karen lives next door?" "How'd you know?" "You're the 3rd house this week she's tried to get demolished via landscaping code violations. I came out of curiosity more than anything." Greg walked around the tree, checked the sidewalk, took a few measurements, and finally shook his head. "There's no damage here. In fact, this is the most secure treehouse I've ever seen." "Appreciate that," I said. He took a selfie with the treehouse behind him. "You mind if I post this? My kids would love it." Karen must have been watching because 10 minutes later I saw her marching across the street again. "This is not over," she hissed, pointing at Greg. "He doesn't have final authority. I'm taking this to the mayor." Greg, amused, replied, "Actually, I do report to the mayor, and I just sent her a picture." Karen's face froze. Karen wasn't done. 2 days later, she dropped off a petition at every house on the block, asking neighbors to restore HOA order by demanding the removal of the excessive treehouse monstrosity. Out of 27 homes, only 2 signed it. One was hers. The other was her sister, who doesn't even live in the neighborhood. Worse for Karen, a counter petition started by my neighbor Lydia got over 30 signatures, including residents from surrounding blocks who wanted to bring their kids over to play. One of them even wrote, "This treehouse restored joy and community spirit to our street. Karen's obsession with control is the actual neighborhood hazard." That quote was reposted across local Facebook groups, and suddenly Karen wasn't just an HOA nuisance. She was a meme. Karen's breaking point. The final straw came the day the local newspaper came by. They'd caught wind of the viral posts and wanted to run a feel-good story on the neighborhood treehouse that brought people together. The journalist, a kind woman named Sandy, interviewed me and a few neighbors. She loved the plaque I'd installed and even got emotional reading it. "My dad passed last year," she said. "He would have loved this." It was a wholesome moment, until Karen, wearing oversized sunglasses and a fur scarf in 90-degree weather, stormed out of her house. She marched over and demanded Sandy include the perspective of those who oppose the environmental and social disruption caused by unauthorized tree architecture. Sandy raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, do you speak for the neighborhood?" "I am the neighborhood," Karen snapped. Sandy looked past her and counted about 15 neighbors gathered under the treehouse, laughing, sipping lemonade, helping their kids up the ladder. "Doesn't seem that way," Sandy said gently. Karen's sunglasses practically trembled. That night, I saw her sitting on her porch alone. Her clipboard was gone. No notes, no yelling, just silence. But I knew Karen wasn't the kind to give up completely. She needed to go out with a bang. And she did, just not the way she hoped. Karen's surprise inspection, the final backfire. A week later, just when we all thought the dust had settled, Karen tried her final card. Early in the morning, she called for a surprise HOA inspection on my property, claiming multiple violations. Of course, none existed, but I wasn't about to face her petty tyranny without witnesses. So I invited our neighborhood group chat over for a breakfast watch party. Within an hour, at least 20 people showed up on my lawn with bagels, coffee, and folding chairs. Some brought donuts. The treehouse had become the place to gather. Karen showed up flanked by 2 new HOA board members, people she'd manipulated into doing her bidding. She stepped forward dramatically, armed with a thick binder labeled "Evidence of Structural Offenses." She began reading a list of imaginary infractions, including bird nesting violations, excessive bark debris, and light pollution from twinkle bulbs. It was all nonsense. One of the board members leaned over and whispered to the other, "She dragged me out here for this?" I stepped forward, calmly, and handed them the city permits, inspection clearance from Greg, and the petition with 30-plus signatures of community support. I also showed them a cease and desist letter from my lawyer filed against any further harassment. The board looked at Karen. "Ma'am, this is not an HOA matter anymore. You're acting outside your authority." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but just then her scarf got caught on one of the tree's lower branches. She flailed, tripped, and fell backward into a kiddie pool someone had set up under the treehouse. Splash. It was poetic. Kids gasped. Adults laughed. Someone filmed it. 10 minutes later, the clip was on TikTok, over 2 million views. Caption: HOA Karen tries to ruin treehouse, gets baptized in neighborhood justice. By the end of the month, Karen resigned from the HOA. Word was she moved to a gated community where pets aren't allowed, mailboxes are standard issue, and trees are trimmed into perfect spheres. The treehouse? Still standing. In fact, it now hosts weekend reading groups, birthday parties, and movie nights. We even installed a mini projector. My dad would have loved it. One neighbor told me, "Your treehouse reminded us what this block used to feel like, before HOA became 3 letters of fear." And if you're enjoying this story, these real, wild HOA revenge tales, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep bringing you more jaw-dropping drama straight from the suburbs.